We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts like the P-Lot Pod, Water Cooler Talk, Bell Smashers, Philly Sports Love and Pain, Drunk on Broad, Beer Battered Sports, and the Fired Up Sports Show, which are available on all major podcasting hosting sites and social media. Also, check out Mark Ramos' Roundup on firedupsports.com, which breaks down the happenings going on with all your favorite local teams.
The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions.
E-A-G-L-E-S Swing and a miss. Struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Flyers are going to win the Stanley Cup. The Flyers win the Stanley Cup for the lead. Yes! Iverson, wow, what a fake off Daniels as he broke his ankles and got all the way to the cup.
Oh well, good Monday. It's a Monday morning. It's Eric. You're joining us from warmer, calmer, cooler pastures down the shore, and but it's the heat is hot in the bank. The heat has been turned up with the acquisition of a new closer who I would tell you is better than advertised. Listen, we're going to break down. We're going to talk Phillies trade. We'll talk the MLB trade line. We'll look at how this affects the rotation and how kind of we look at that playoff rotation coming, down the stretch. Bats might be waking up a little bit. Phillies Wall of Fame, right? They have the Wall of Fame weekend. So let's start with Phillies trade deadline, right? The two acquisitions, you get Johan Duran, and you end up making another trade on a different on the next day, and you get Harrison Bader. Talk to me about those two guys, and then we can kind of get into the minutia of the guys that they gave up to.
Yeah, so it definitely seemed going into the deadline that back into the bullpen was kind of number one priority. I know we had talked before about the balancing that between and needing a bigger bat too. But for what they gave up for 2.5 years of control for Duran, I don't think you can really beat it. I mean, obviously, I liked Abel, but given the how our rotation is kind of set up, he there's not really a lot of space for him. So I felt like this is probably good for the Phillies and for him.
Yeah.
And Eduardo Tait he's a tough bat to lose. The issue with him has always been like, is he actually going to project to stay at catcher as he kind of progresses, and he's so young. So it's like he's got a ton of pop. His bat could be really, really, really exciting, but you just don't know what you're going to get with him. And are you just basically holding on to a potential DH in a few years? So it's kind of a roll of the dice, and you know what you're getting in Duran, and we've already seen it twice. And between his actual performance on the field, I feel like has almost become like not secondary, but it's like there's so many things going on when he enters a game. The whole entrance thing is electric, and it's so much fun to watch. But then on Friday night, he comes out and he throws 4 pitches. I think it was 4 splitters, 98, 99, 99, and 100 with a splitter. Are you kidding me? I just don't even know how you potentially hit that.
Yeah, I mean, his success rate is, God, it's somewhere between 9 and 10, right? You're for every 10 appearances, you're getting about 9.5 saves, which is like wild to see that 95% success rate. The pitch arsenal, right? Last night he has a stretch where he throws 5 pitches that are somewhere between 101 and 103.
Yeah.
The splitter at that speed with that movement, I mean, when you and we can get into the other MLB trade deadline stuff, but like when you look at for example, what the Padres gave up to get Mason Miller, they gave up a lot, And I would argue that it wasn't a guy, it was a guy that, people in the MLB know kind of talked about. But when you look at what he gives you, and I think the thing that you pointed out that's most important, you've got him under team control for the next 2 years. And, yes, you gave up a guy who kind of somewhere, Abel seems to me like his ceiling is like your back end of the rotation, but he could also be a guy who's like a 4A player. You gave up him and a guy who you pointed out, right, could catch, but is the more and more, and he's young, right? He's not going to be 18, 19, right? But like the more and more he hits, the more and more he projects as a DH. So like for what you gave up to have this guy at the back end of your bullpen and to not have to worry about that for the next, at least 2.5 seasons. I mean, this was when you look at what you got, what you gave up, might be one of the best deals that happened on the trade deadline.
Yeah, it really could be, especially just seeing how much the back end of the bullpen kind of struggled for a while there, and really just not knowing who was going to come in. Guys didn't necessarily always know their roles. It was just like, but again, it's only 2 games, but I genuinely do not feel like any form of like concern or anxiety when he comes into a game. Like, I mean, obviously it's going to happen. Every closer is going to have, a bad outing here and there, but it's just his stuff is so good that it just makes for like what seems to be a really easy 9th inning for him.
I mean, Eric, what the last time that we had a guy that you could kind of put your feet up in the 9th was Lidge. Before then, this guy, and you're right, like we talk about, he's under team control, right? He's 27, right? The averages on his fastball are on the plus side of 100. And I'm just, limits the barrel rate to 3%, right? Has a 65.5% GB percentage, which ranks in the top 1% of Major League Baseball. I mean, it's amazing that Minnesota let him go for what they let him go, right? Because
they were having a full-on fire sale,
right? Like, I mean, their thank you posts, it was almost like they were running out of space to be able to post them. Like he's in the 99th percentile for barrel rates, right? It becomes really, really hard to argue with that move. And the way that it's like we saw a little bit in these, in this weekend series with the Tigers, how that's going to change the way that they approach the back end of the bullpen, right? And you look at a game like last night, seems to me like it would be a really good projection for a playoff game, right? You let like Christopher Sanchez barely get, I don't even know, did he get to 90 pitches in 8 innings?
84 pitches.
So he throws 84 pitches in 9 innings. And then you hand the ball over to Duran, and he does his thing, and it really does. Now we can talk about how this affects the rest of this bullpen, because the way that this allows the rest of this bullpen to kind of slot, God, it makes such a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, it moves everyone down one role basically, which is perfect because I like Kerkering's arm. I think he's got really good stuff, but he's still kind of young, very unproven in that 9th inning role. So now you can put Strom and Kerkering in that 8th or 7th inning kind of setup situation, and it just moves everyone else down a little bit. Plus, David Robertson, I know he's not coming up exactly when for the 15 days from when he was signed, but I think there's probably still something there with Robertson because he's going to be fresh, right? I mean, he's still building up arm strength down in Lehigh Valley, but you can ride him. Alvarado's coming back in a couple of weeks, so ride him. Like those guys, you can overuse so much because they've had so much time off. So it really lengthens the bullpen. Plus, what they've talked about before, and Dombrowski was saying it before the trade deadline is one of those starters is likely going to go to the bullpen. To me, the pretty obvious choice right now is Jesus Luzardo, just because he's got really good stuff. I think it's good to have another lefty in there, and you kind of see like it almost seems like he's running out of gas. He's thrown more innings this year than he has in a long time, so it might be getting to that point where it's okay. Shorten how long he's throwing. He can go out. He's got a really good pitch mix with the really nice, curveball sweeper type thing, a hard fastball. So they can use him there. It really just lengthens the bullpen a lot.
I actually think the guy that the guy that I would look to move is Suarez, only because he's got because he's done it before and we've seen him in that role. But we also are we're remiss of the fact that like Nola's on his way back, right? He's going to slide in there somewhere because he's not getting left off a playoff roster, right? Like he's going to slide in one of those starting roles or in a bullpen role. And then you've got Andrew Painter, and he's kind of waiting in the wings and what he could do as a back end of your bull, like as a guy that, I know he's ramping up to be a starter, but like in the playoffs, it's kind of like all hands on deck. So you've also got those two guys on the in the mix in terms of like, it's interesting to see that like this glutton of starting pitching could really put them in a good position to have both of those things fortified going into this playoffs. And I look at, you could be in a situation where you have like almost like a piggyback start where like you let Luzardo pitch until things get a little right, maybe 2-3 innings, and then Noah or Pater come in, right? And then you get to the sixth, right? And then you hand the ball to Kirkring, Strom, right? And then Duran, right? Like you can see it, like they're going to have a lot of flexibility, and that's going to be on Rob Thompson to be able to make those decisions to, not let games get away from him, kind of have a quick hook and be able to say like, yeah, I'm going to just get another guy in because we got so many guys. I'm curious to see how that plays out.
Yeah, it's definitely a good problem to have. Just having that much starting pitching depth where you do have that flexibility. And it's going to be about pushing the right buttons. But another thing I think is, we still have 2 months to go, right, until October rolls around. So a lot of things can still happen. Some of these guys, especially when it comes to like I said, mentioned with Luzardo and his innings, Suarez, he's had that, like he does this every year, it feels like, where he has like a stretch where it's like this guy looks like Cy Young, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, is he tiring a little bit? The velocity's dipped a little bit in the last couple outings, but it's kind of one of those things where you wonder how many innings does he actually have where he can be effective? Because what was it? He came back in May, he had that one bad start, and then basically from the end of May up until the All-Star break, I mean, he was pitching like he was one of the best pitchers in the game. And it's not even like he's pitching horribly right now, but you can tell there might be a little, fatigue or wear and tear there. So it's just like durability with him. So he's another guy, they could bring up, if Painter continues doing somewhat well down in Lehigh Valley, which his last 2 starts have actually been pretty good, and he finally topped out over 100 pitches in his last outing. You can bring him up and then, give some of these guys a little bit of a breather. So there's a lot of different ways that they can go at this. But I think the biggest thing is making sure that all these guys we're talking about are healthy, assuming that, the Phillies are able to make another run into the postseason here. Yeah.
And all right. So the other trade that they make is they get Harrison Bader again from the Twins for 2 lower level prospects, right? Guys that were kind of a little further down on the list. Statistically, he comes in and probably becomes one of your best defensive and, provides a little bit of an uptick, in offense. He's a guy who's kind of got that journeyman, like he's kind of bounced. He's played on what 5 teams in 5 years. That but he does bring right a guy who's got a ton of playoff experience, guy that's got a lot of I don't know if juice is the right word, but like brings a lot of energy to a club. And they send Rojas down, so he's a guy that I could see as they start to integrate him. It probably won't take long for him to become probably your everyday center fielder. Talk to me about that move. I know that there were a couple of other guys on the list, right? Stephen Kwan was a guy that a lot of people had their eye on. Apparently, the conversations between the Indians and the Phillies and the White Sox and the Phillies around Luis Robert and centered around guys like Andrew Painter, Crawford, and Miller, which it seems like the Phillies were pretty kind of steadfast that they weren't going to move off. Kwame is a guy who might have had, he would have had team control, similar to, a situation with Duran. Happy, not happy, fine. How do you feel in terms of this move?
I think fine is a good way to put it.
Okay,
it's like
kind of where I landed.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, if you gave me if I had a list of outfielders, that were potentially available, Bader was probably 4 or 5 on that list. But just seeing that, Cleveland probably wasn't budging off of wanting Painter as a return, is something I can understand them not going to make that move. I think Dombrowski and company are really high on his ceiling there. The White Sox not making any concessions to move on from Luis Robert is organizational malpractice.
It's silly.
What are they doing?
This will be this is at least the second trade deadline that they've done this exact same thing.
Yeah, they're not going to pick up his option next year. They're getting nothing for him now. When even if you would have budged and just taken, okay, I'll take a top 10 prospect and a top 20 prospect or something like that. It's like, okay, I would have done that.
Right.
But like the fact that they weren't budging off of, of like a top 5 prospect for a guy who has a lot of potential, but hasn't really shown it. Now we've talked before, and I remember saying like, I was not on the Luis Robert train of coming to Philadelphia, but I talked myself into it as we were getting to the deadline and just seeing what outfielders were out there, because he plays a good defense, and watching him in that series, he's kind of on a hot streak right now. But I really think if he goes out of Chicago, out of that lineup, out of that situation, and he actually has talent around him, I wonder what that would do for his for his stats going on for the rest of the year, because there's a lot of talent there. We haven't really seen it since like 2021 or 2022 from him.
He seems like the guy who is in the perfect need of a change of scenery. Things are like dead and mundane, and they're bad on top of bad for multiple years. There's no prospect of them kind of moving forward. I don't understand because listen, you did have, right, it was either him or Stephen Kwan, right? There really wasn't a ton of options. But I just look at that and go, like, if I'm Chicago, like, you just make your best deal, right? Like, you get everybody's best deal on the table. You pick the one that you like the most, and you move on. Because he's not going to be here if and when it ever turns around. So, like, what are you holding on to? And I think the same kind of conversation happened in Oakland, Sacramento with the A's. Right, with they were steadfast for the last couple of years, right, that they're not moving off of Rooker and Miller. Well, they did, because the Padres came to them with a deal that they couldn't refuse, right?
Yeah.
And you don't make a deal until there's a deal there that you can't move off of. And when you look at kind of what they moved off of to get Mason Miller, I want to party with the dude that is the GM of the fucking Padres, because he
makes moves.
He just rolled all the dice and just and that's for a team who is sitting on the outside of the wild card race looking in at this point.
Yeah, and they already have like a pretty solid foundation. I mean, that trade, their trade deadline, I think, was very successful from a get good right now thing. But man, the prospects they gave up for Miller and even part of the O'Hearn and everything trade, like they gave up a lot. And we actually talked, I think, the last show, and you had put out the idea of the Phillies trying to make a move for Mason Miller and Brent Rooker, and I said I don't really see like the A's having the incentive to trade either of those guys. But I guess when you come with it, when a team knocks on the door with a prospect package like that, what are you going to do? You're not going to say no. I'm glad the Phillies didn't do it. I love Mason Miller, but I'm totally fine getting Duran here for a lot cheaper. Now,
Yeah.
there's not as much team control. Mason Miller has more team control, but I will sacrifice those extra couple of years to not have to give up the haul that they gave up.
Yeah, listen, so I'm looking at, right, so in the Mason Miller, JP Sears trade, right? They trade their number 1, the MLB number 3, right? They trade in the Padres system, they're number 1, they're number 3, they're number 13 and number 17.
Yeah.
And then when they in the Orioles trade, they trade number 6, number 8, number 16. Amongst other guys outside of
the top
right,
20.
like outside of their top 20. They trade 2 other prospects outside the top 20 in the deal that they make with the Royals to get Freddie Fermin. They trade a different prospect package to the Brewers. Like they just said, like, it's it. Like we are all in. Pretty, kind of, you did a good job at just saying, hey, listen, we're leaving no stone unturned. They turned over a decent portion of their roster with all the moves that they had to make. And now, I mean, the back end of their bullpen. The back end of their bullpen is nasty
because it was already really good.
It was already the best. It was already the best in baseball.
Yeah,
and then you add a guy like Mason Miller to that, and it just. And then I think over the weekend, right, Mason Miller was pitching the 8th. Suarez was pitching the 9th. I mean, they're going to be nasty, and they're going to give the Dodgers all they can handle going down the stretch.
Yeah, it should be a fun race to watch. Because the Dodgers have just had so many. It feels like every year we say the same thing. Like they have such a good roster, and they always kind of fill in the holes. Like it just seems like they always have someone who can step up and play. But the amount of injuries that they have, especially their pitching staff, every single year, is something that it's just it's kind of mind boggling because Glasnow has always kind of been an injury prone guy. Snell kind of same thing, but there was that whole situation with like Tony Gonsolin and Dustin May, like they were getting hurt every single year too. It's just like I don't know what they're doing to those guys out there, but like they have such talent. But right now, because of some of those injuries and everything, and even some guys like Mookie Betts underperforming, the Padres, I think, kind of do have a shot at making a run for the West, or at least getting in as a wild card team and then making some noise when they get in there. As we know, anything can happen. So I totally get why they did it, but being a Padres fan in like 8 years might not be that fun.
No, certainly. Listen, but like when you look at their lineup right now, there's not really a hole at any spot.
Yeah.
Like their lineup is pretty solid. Like when you look at like they'll flip flop between Luis Ariz and Cronenworth and Jake O'Hearn at first, right? Those guys will all get spots, but Cronenworth is also going to play second pretty consistently. You're going to have Machado and Xander Bogaerts, and then in the outfield, right? In the outfield, you've got Tatis and Jackson Merrill are you can kind of pencil those guys in, but you've got Ramon Laureano. You got Ryan O'Hearn. You're going to have a lot of roster flexibility in terms of how you construct that lineup, and then have a lot of veteran depth bringing off the bench. For those playoff games late in games, they're going to be a tough out. They're going to be a tough out down the stretch, and they're going to and. Do you buy into any of the future conversation that they look at turning Mason Miller into a starter?
So I know that was actually something that that people had talked about. He's obviously a very good closer, but if they have Robert Suarez and decide to lock him up and they have some other bullpen depth, I mean, realistically, starters are probably more valuable than closers. So while Mason Miller's an electric closer, he I think originally was drafted as a starter, and the plan was eventually to convert him to a starter. Mason Miller would probably like that because then his next contract goes up pretty
Yeah,
considerable.
yeah, I can imagine. Any other deals at the deadline? Deals at the deadline you want to talk about? Because the Mets do make a bunch of moves,
Yeah,
right?
those are the ones I was thinking about.
I mean, we can touch on that a little bit. Like they make a bunch of moves, especially in their bullpen. They get a guy that we talked about a little bit in Cedric Mullins. Um, did they do enough to really create any separation, or does it still seem like it seems like at the trade deadline they kind of went a little 1-for-1 with the Phillies?
Yeah, I think they strengthened on paper. They strengthened the back end of their bullpen by a lot. I mean, adding Rogers, adding Helsley as kind of that way to get to Diaz. Plus, you have Stanek. Like I know it's funny since the deadline. I think most of those guys have pitched pretty poorly for the Mets, which is very funny to see. But
Yeah.
like on paper, they definitely strengthened their bullpen, and they could have a potentially very nasty bullpen
Mm-hmm.
going to a playoff situation as well. Cedric Mullins, I was very happy went to the Mets. I will take Harrison Bader over Cedric Mullins, 100%.
I would agree with you.
Um, again, I think from like a flashy and like numbers standpoint, maybe Cedric Mullins looks a little bit better, but like he's had a decent part of the year this year right now, but I don't see that being something that's consistent. Whereas Bader, I think you just know what you're going to get, right? Like you're not getting an all-star, but you're getting a guy who can fill in. He can play a really solid center field. And you mentioned earlier, like some of his numbers, he's basically already one of the best Phillies outfielders that we have. It's like,
Yeah.
so I think the Mets got better, but I don't think they got like astronomically better. Like I think the Phillies did a good job keeping up there. Like the Phillies needed that closer, that guy you can rely on in the ninth inning to kind of counteract what they have. And the thing is, and I talked about it earlier, but like everyone who's coming back, the Phillies bullpen is going to get stronger. So I think right now you kind of look at that, and they're kind of in a similar place there. The biggest thing is just making sure like that the guys that we have perform.
I mean,
How many times now this year?
it really is such a broken record, and it doesn't matter where you find your Phillies conversation.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's on the radio, if it's on your favorite podcast. The message that you will hear pretty consistently is if this team is going to go how its stars go, and unless those stars really step up, you're kind of looking at it. It just kind of is what it is, and I know that when the conversation started with Stephen Kwan, right, was right. You're going to get a guy who's under team control, who's a legitimate leadoff guy, allows you to kind of reshuffle your lineup and put Schwarber behind Harper, so Harper gets the protection from Schwarber. The real crime in all of this is that you're not getting production, right? Bohm's been out. You're not getting production from Stott, and Marsh has been better. I will give him that, right?
Mhm.
But you don't have the guy that provides the lineup structure, that provides Harper the protection that he needs, especially in the playoffs, right? Because in the playoffs, it'll become really easy to just pitch around him and just avoid his bat in the midst of how their lineup is constructed, unless they get someone else to step up. And then you can the one thing I would play around with a little bit is, if you take Turner and then you just kind of slot up a little bit and let Harper bat. I know he loves the bat 3, right? But if you give him if you slide him up to 2 and you bat Schwarber 3,
Mhm.
you can kind of give Harper the protection that he needs in the playoffs. After that, right? Like you're going to need Castellanos to step up, right? You're going to need bums. You're going to need the guys that you've already brought in, that you've already paid to be who you thought they could be
Mm-hmm.
if this team is going to go on a run.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that last year with the Mets series. Why pitch to
Very
Harper?
much so.
Because there, and so that series, I think the only guy who actually did hit was Cassidy that series. But yeah, that's the biggest thing. Is just figuring that out. But right now, like you're kind of seeing it. There's innings that are frustrating, right? There's a couple games here and there that are frustrating, but overall, over the last week or so, Harper's kind of been on a tear, like getting extra base hit after extra base hit. Schwarber's back on fire.
Yeah.
So like the lineup kind of is getting to go, and we're getting production from JT right now. The biggest one that you mentioned, and there might have to be some real life off-season conversations here. Bryson Stott, like
I mean,
defense, great, but
he
if I
made
see one
some
more weak fly ball, I'm going to lose it.
He made some incredible plays last night.
He
Like
did.
we were out to dinner, had the game on in the bar, and it was just like the play he makes late. I think it was like late in the eighth, maybe in the ninth. But he's going up the middle, dive slides, pops right up. Like his defense is incredible.
So good.
But his approach at the plate is awful. Like it's borderline like do we have we have to have the conversation, because you can't have, if this team has the aspirations that it does of going deep into October, you can't have an automatic out at the end. And that's what he's essentially become. And they've slotted him in the lineup that way, batting ninth.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not making hard outs, right? They're pop-ups, they're weak fly balls, they're ground outs to second. They're bad at bats after bad at bats. And I don't know necessarily what you do to correct that, because it's not like this is his third season.
He was up in 2020. He was up in 2022 because he was on that team.
Right?
So
This
is what, his fourth. So 22 was pretty decent. 23 was really good. And then 24 and 25 have just been like kind of missing.
I mean, it's Eric, you're being kind with your words. It's been bad. I mean, it's been, and that's, and I think, I don't know if it involves a trade. I don't know how they rectify that situation. I don't know. Like, I know there's been conversations, right? Like moving positions, but like, I don't know where you move them.
No, because honestly, the second base is a position you don't need a ton of offensive production out of, but you also can't have like negative offensive production either. And
you just need to not be an automatic out.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's like the thing I will give him credit for is like the fact that he has had such a off season in terms of hitting, and he doesn't let it carry over to other parts of his game. Like the other Friday night when he beat out that throw to that, they ended up challenging. Like the dude's hustling every play out there. Like, so you like to see it. Like, I really want to see this guy turn it around, but you have to start wondering, like, okay, what is the real Bryson Stott? Like, we're now seeing more often than not a lack of offensive production, even though he's really good elsewhere. But like, even if he could be, a 240, right, 245 hitter with limited power, but like, just don't be a guy that you can't that is just going to pop up or roll a ball over to second base every single time. Like, he's rolling balls over to second base that are like outside the zone that, like, I don't even know how you're rolling that over there. Like,
it's really bad. And Marsh has been better. But it would not surprise me if he's involved in a trade. Wouldn't be surprising that they just realize. And I think the other, like, what you thought you were going to get from him and Bohm and Marsh have they've all underperformed for what was as advertised. And I think the lack of production that you're getting from your outfield is something that needs to be addressed. Harrison Bader was a guy that you could have gotten in the offseason
Mhm.
that, like, you end up having to trade for him in the middle of the season, right? Kepler is a guy that, like, at this point, you can probably DFA him and move on, and bring Justin Crawford up and see what you got in him. I just that as good as this team is, there are so many question marks, which is also so frustrating because you could only imagine where they would be if they were getting like average production from some of those guys.
Yeah. The outfield production just being so inconsistent has really been frustrating. Um, you know, Casty is so interesting because, like, I feel like there's production there sometimes, but he can also have the most maddening games that you could ever watch. I saw something the other day. So one of the things when I'm watching a game with people, one of the things that we like, I there might be a way to bet on this. I don't know, but swinging at the first pitch, I think he does it like 70% of the time. But and actually, like, it's so frustrating. But his batting average on the first pitch is like over 400. It's
It's
crazy.
crazy.
Like,
It
I
really
don't
is.
know how
And
he does it.
it's kind. I mean, listen, it's kind of akin to what's happening in Cleveland with the, where the you got Class A and you got the other guy who got
Yeah,
suspended, right? Essentially for what seems to be and appears to be the orchestrating bets to whether the first pitch that they throw is a ball or a strike.
yeah. Yeah, so I guess
Um,
you can bet on it.
my guess is that you could probably, if you wanted to, you find the right sports book. I'm sure you can probably find what does he swing or does he not. But
Ugh.
you're right. It's hard, right? And it's hard because you're talking about the front end of that lineup, right? Where you got Schwarber's having arguably probably one of his best career years, right? And I'm just
Mhm.
looking at the stats from Ryan Lawrence, right? You got through 111 games, tied with Otani in the NL for home runs with 38, tied with Cal Raleigh for RBI lead at 88, tied with Otani for fourth best OBP in the NL, and tied with Raleigh for fourth best OPS in Major League Baseball. Right? He has done anything and everything, and it does really feel like, Eric, every time you turn on the TV, he's crushing one to some part of the park that doesn't where a baseball does not belong. Um, he's just been right. He's got the most career home runs for a player with fewer than 1,000 hits
Mhm.
at 319. The next closest guy is Otani at 262.
Wow.
So like he's a guy that every day that he plays, the number goes up. So like signing him is paramount and getting him, to be a part of this moving forward. But like there are so many other parts of this lineup that you have to fix. But the way that they have constructed this team, those pieces are already here.
Mhm.
Like this team is not constructed in a way to be able to do like what the Padres are doing, which is just go out and make all of those parts interchangeable. I do really feel like I don't know what it would have been, but I feel like there was another move to be made, maybe in your bullpen, but with the conversation that we've had earlier, maybe those arms are coming. They're just kind of in-house and it needs to be reconfigured. But
Mhm.
having another guy off the bench for that playoff run, I feel like that would have been something that I would have liked to see, but I'm curious to see how the addition of Bader in the lineup every day, playing center field. He plays a great center field. He's still going to be able to get to the gap in the same in kind of the same way that Rojas did.
Mhm.
Um, but if you don't get production from those corner outfield positions, like Kepler's been almost an automatic out. Like he's not been very underperforming for I mean, He's underperforming even for what he did before he was here.
Yeah, it's in the beginning of the year, you're kind of like, oh, maybe he's off to a slow start. But I mean, we're in August now. Like, it's not a slow start. He's just not going to be good.
It just is what it is.
Yeah. So I think what I read the other day, I forget who tweeted it. Someone said something about the fact that Justin Crawford, if he remains in the minors till August 15th, he maintains his rookie status for next year. So is that maybe the date we start on the calendar?
So
For,
about 11, 12 days from now.
Yeah. So Kepler's got a couple more days here, but I mean, at that point, most of his contract will be paid, so you're DFAing him, and you're eating a couple $1 million. Not my money, so
no. And on some level, is he worth keeping around for that playoff roster to have a guy as a bat off the bench?
So that
No?
I don't know, because I don't trust any bat off the bench right now.
I mean, it's pretty slim pickings.
It is, and when Bohm's back, and you have and Sosa is kind of going back to playing a couple times a week between second or third or whatever. Maybe Sosa a little bit off the bench, I would trust. But there's not really anyone else. Like, I don't trust Kepler when he's playing every day and seeing and getting regular at bats. So you're gonna have a whole different situation. He's gonna be pissed off because he's not playing, so you're gonna have to deal with that. He's going to be getting less at bats, so he's probably going to be worse if that's possible. So I don't know. I don't think it is worth it. I don't know what you do, but just hope to God no one gets hurt.
Yeah, I know that. I know a lot of the hesitancy in the conversation with bringing Crawford up, right? Is that you're talking about a guy who's doesn't have a ton of power,
right?
Right. Who's a guy who currently is hitting a lot of balls on the ground. But I would take a guy who puts the ball in play versus a guy whose at bats look putrid.
Yeah. And Crawford has incredible speed. So he does hit the ball on the ground. Who knows how it's going to translate to the majors? It's obviously a very different scenario, but I figure it can't hurt to try it at this point, just because
not at all.
You know what everyone else in the outfield is. There's no one that is going to surprise you at this point. So maybe, except for maybe Bader, but again, you look at his career averages, he's not going to be a top tier outfielder, but he's going to be serviceable for you and better than what you have in a lot of these cases. But there's no sense, I think, in prolonging the inevitable here, because Crawford does have speed. He can play good defense. He has been driving a little bit more this year. I still think there's going to be times where he's going to be a very frustrating at bat, I think. But he's got to figure it out. I mean, he's in their top 3 prospects, and they're holding on to him. They're not trading him. So they must see something there and have some faith in this guy being something. So what I don't see the point of putting on a Kepler.
It can't possibly be worse than what's there.
Right. Yeah.
So
and he's going to be cheap. So
yeah, and he'll be cheap for a bunch of years. So in my mind, I'm that whole manipulating contract stuff like that, that stuff bothers me a little bit, because I'm looking at this and going all right, so what? So he's not going to win Rookie of the Year? Boo-hoo. He's not it doesn't matter if he comes up now or if he comes up he's not winning. I don't know, that minutia of holding on to a guy who's not great in your lineup for because you want to have the guy under team control and protect his rookie. I'm just I need this team seems like it does need an infusion of talent.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the production that you're getting from Johan Duran in these first 2 games really does give this team a kind of jolt of energy, knowing that get to the 9th. If you get to the 9th of the lead, odds are 99% of the time you're going to win that game. So when you look at he's pitched 2 innings, he has 1 strikeout, he hasn't given up a hit, and he hasn't walked a guy, right? And his average pitch in both of those appearances is 102.5. get to the ninth with a lead.
Mm-hmm.
So like you need, like last night, Christopher Sanchez was as advertised, right? He what pitches 8. I'm just reading the stat line here. Pitches 8, gives up no earned runs, 5 hits, 6 strikes, 1 walk, 84 pitches.
Yeah.
Like the math to get to Duran is pretty simple, right?
Mhm.
Like if you put any kind of runs up on the board and you can get to the back end of this bullpen, right? Because in a couple weeks you're going to have Alvarado for that stretch run, until the end of the season. You need the bats to be. I don't even need them to be great, Eric. You need the bats to be like average.
Yeah.
And you can probably in this lineup put up a bunch of runs and be able to win games. And this season is really going to come down to those series against the Mets.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. Those couple
most
series.
definitely.
It's going to be electric. I think. Just because it's going to mean so much, and I think it's really going to show. Okay, what do we have here? Like if these guys are going to just kind of keel over like they did last season in the postseason, or what? But just consistency from this offense, because you said it. I mean, the pitching has been doing its job, at least the starting pitching, pretty much all season, right? You've had a couple clunkers here and there, but for the most part, we could say that the starting pitching has been better than advertised. The bullpen now, I think, is maybe not perfect, but it is better than it was this time last week. The only thing that I think is still a big glaring question mark, and I really, until I see it in important situations, like the offense is still a question mark to me. And there are too many guys in this lineup that I think are too streaky to the point where they all slump at the same time or they're all hot at the same time. The lineup definitely goes with Schwarber and Harper, and right now both of them are hot. So they're looking better. But what happens if one of those guys goes cold? Who's going to pick it up? Because I don't know who else would. So until I start seeing it, that's really where I'm at with this team.
Yeah, I mean, there's really not much else to say, Eric. It's going to boil down to do your biggest guys show up at the biggest moments in the season, and that's kind of where it is, right? They have the Phillies Wall of Fame this weekend. Jimmy Rollins. I think the celebration of Jimmy Rollins has been something that's kind of just continued on since he's moved on, and even still today, that to look back at his career I have a greater appreciation because the conversations that are being had now about how statistically good he was, and where he ranks in the guy when you compare him to the shortstops that are already in the Hall of Fame. Who's next? Who are these next group of who's the next group of Phillies that could potentially go into the Hall of Fame?
Oh, Hall of Fame. Well,
we can talk Wall of Fame. We can talk because I know that like we're probably embarking on that parade of guys from that 08 squad.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. So it's probably, I think in terms of Hall of Fame, Utley had a pretty good showing on the ballot last year. I don't think it's this year, probably not even next year, but maybe in the next 3 or 4 years, we could see Chase Utley get in there. Because again, just like you were mentioning about Rollins' numbers again, compared to other shortstops who are already in the Hall. Chase with second baseman is kind of in a similar situation there. The only thing that really hurt Chase was that nagging knee injury that limited a lot of his playing time. That I think decreased some of his numbers there. But I hate to say it, but I really think of the 08 guys. Really, the only two you're probably looking at are Utley and maybe an outside shot for Jimmy. Currently. Yeah, I think Bryce is probably on a trajectory to get there as long as he stays healthy. And I mean, I think it's because his first few years in the league weren't great, but like if his home run numbers keep piling up and he can stay in the league for another 8 to 10 years and hit at the rate he is, and Schwarber could get kind of close to that 500 mark, and that's usually like that could potentially push him. I think he's still an outlier, but if things go the right way, it's a possibility.
Yeah, that milestone in this era, getting to 500 is a huge deal, and that's a huge checkbox for those guys that still look at the old versus the new
Yeah,
when
not war.
they're voting. And with MLB implementing the DH across the board, that's really helped him, and it will help him kind of elongate his career.
Yep.
But listen, the season that he's having, he could be in the conversation to kind of surpass Ryan Howard for his single season record, right? And if he's in that 40 to, I'll be generous, right? Let's say he's in like that 35 to 45 every year. And there's no reason to think that he's not, or that he can't be. He's a guy that very easily could be knocking on the door of that 500 home run plateau, and that milestone is huge for being able to get him, elevated status. I look at like Rollins, to me, seems like he's the guy who has the best chance at being in, but Utley, it's kind of hard. It does when you look at his stuff compared to the other guys that are in there, they're kind of all in the same neighborhood, and he kind of gets hurt because of how the end of his career kind of played out, right? He starts having the knee injuries, stuff gets cut short, but also has a absolutely fabulous resume. But I'm curious to see how like our generation will view the next group of guys going into the Wall of Fame, because it's gonna like the guys from that 08 squad, they're not gonna have to veer very far from that roster, because after that like 08, 09 group that went to back-to-back World Series, the pickings are really slim for like the next decade.
Which is good, because you have probably 10 guys you can get in from the 08, 09 era,
Right.
which will then get you to like the time that some of these guys that are playing now start to retire. Because let's be honest, I don't think Cody Ashe or Aaron Altair are going to have a real shot at getting on there. But
That's
yeah,
great.
I mean, you got I was just gonna say Hamels is a shoo-in to get on there. Howard, Utley are going to get on there. Jason Worth should get on there. Shane Victorino should get on there. Like almost the entire starting lineup should be on. Pat Burrell's already on, but like Carlos Ruiz should probably get on there at some point. He had so many
Brad Lidge.
Brad Lidge. You could maybe even argue like Ryan Madsen at some point, right? Potentially, like he's probably kind of an outlier one, but like he had some solid seasons with the Phillies.
What about Jamie Moyer?
Jamie Moyer,
like Jamie Moyer, who's got ties to the area, right? Being from Souderton, who was integral in being part of that rotation to get them to the World Series. And let's be honest, some of the guys that are already on there makes it a little easier to make some cases for some guys that could potentially be in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's like I think we just probably rattled off 7 or 8 guys that that are like probably more than deserving, and a couple outliers too. So I think they'll be good there for a little while. I'll just be curious to see who it is next, because it's going to be one of Chase, Ryan, or Cole.
Yeah,
it's got to be one of those guys. They were like kind of I think those will be the next 3. It's just a matter of what order they do it in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just pulling up the roster, right? You've got guys on the fringe, right? You've got guys like Pedro Feliz, who was a great, some of those guys made some key plays, right? Maybe not Hall of Fame worthy, but like
he was so important to that team. Like he played great
defense
at third base. Would come up with a timely hit every now and then, which is something that maybe some of these current guys can look back to. You don't have to be an all-star to get a timely hit.
Not at all. Right. And I'm looking at some guys further down the roster. Now, these are not Wall of Fame guys, but just guys that I completely forgot that played in that 08 season. Right. But you have the the Tadahito Iguchi, right?
Yeah.
He has the one play where he scores. Does he? I feel like
That was, I think, the only good thing. He was abysmal that year, but he had like one. I forget what it was. He had one important thing. I feel like that entire
because
season.
I'm looking at it. He played. Oh God. But then another guy that you also had So Taguchi on that team that played in that
Yeah.
year. Um,
Oh wait, he's who
but
I'm
it
thinking of.
was
Gucci is who I'm thinking of.
is So Taguchi the guy. So like it's just cool. It's cool to kind of
Yeah.
look back and kind of see where those guys are. But it was but they're gonna have they'll have no shortage of guys that are gonna be available for
Yeah.
that Wall of Fame. So
And that
right,
bullpen
Ed
in '08 was like there were guys that you would be like, how is it like Clay Condrey, Scott Air, or like
Scott Air.
yeah, like I mean that bullpen was just so good that year. Chad Durbin was in that bullpen. Like they had such a good
Yeah.
bullpen that year from a lot of guys, like other than Lidge and Madsen, who like you didn't really hear from a lot. Like JC Romero stepped in and had a great season. Like that was a really well constructed bullpen from a lot of guys, kind of just getting pulled in from everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it will be cool because it will allow for exactly what we're talking about. We'll have the opportunity to be able to bring back those guys and have those conversations and kind of talk through that. It will keep that '08 season current, but hopefully in the interim we've kind of reinvigorated the parade route with some new hardware. So
Yeah, hopefully.
so Eric, anything we missed before we jump out?
I don't think so. No, those are all the topics I was thinking of.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, there's going to be no shortage of baseball conversation. The Phillies are about to kind of embark on wrapping up this stretch of games against American League teams. Talk to me about what you're looking forward to on the way out in these next
Um,
couple weeks.
so I think this series that we're dealing with right now, Baltimore, they've been like such a disappointment. So I think this is a series that they should have
Yeah.
a pretty good handle on. Um, and then I'm trying to think after is that when the Reds come back in or no?
I'm pulling it up right now.
Baltimore, then Texas, then Cincinnati. Okay, Texas actually they start out the year not great, but they're looking a little bit better now. They have some really good starting pitching in Jacob deGrom. I know they got Nathan Eovaldi back. So that could be kind of a tough series. I really think though, like you look at the rest of the month, Seattle's decent. There's a series there against the Mets in the 25th through the 27th. The Braves have been abysmal. The Nationals they should hopefully handle, and they got a lot of games against Washington. So
Yeah.
this is the month because June and July I think they finished right around 500 those 2 months combined. It might have actually been 500 on the dot. So this is a month that I think they really need to take advantage of. The nice thing is the final series of the season. Did you see who that's against? Minnesota. So they don't have any players. So that should be hopefully if we need a couple games, we
Yeah.
can finish up with 3 against Miami and 3 against Minnesota. That hopefully could be a bit of a standings patter if we need it.
Yeah, because you're going to come home. You're gonna have those games at home.
Yeah.
Right. Those games should be pretty winnable games, right? And you're
Yeah.
going to come as I'm looking at the schedule, right towards the middle of September, right? You're going to come. That'll come off a West Coast trip where you're going to play at LA and at Arizona.
Yeah.
So having the opportunity to be able to have those 6 games against teams that are going to be well out of the mix is going to be a huge asset. I know there was one thing that I remembered I wanted to ask you about.
Mm-hmm.
The Bristol Motor Speedway game.
Oh yeah. I forgot.
I mean, it gets rain delayed for like 3 hours. They don't start playing until 9:45. They're not able to finish the game that night.
They didn't finish the first inning that game.
I'm trying to be generous here, right? And then they I feel like that one, I barely even knew that it was on. Like I knew the game was happening there, but I didn't even really remember that it was on until I literally just kind of like scrolled past it. and then to see how it was kind of like that game to me, they should have played every game of that series there, play all
Mhm.
3 games there. But that game should have been Sunday Night Baseball. Like that is something
Yeah.
that I feel like you had the opportunity, you probably could have highlighted it a little bit more.
Yeah. Instead, they did Saturday Night Baseball that wasn't really all that well advertised, and there was rain delays. And then I don't know if you saw any of the tweets from people who were there, but they started running out of food, and people were posting like they were literally serving hot dogs without buns because they were like running out of everything. It was kind of crazy. So it sounds like it was kind of a disaster, but
Yeah, and listen, we've had conversations about like having games in like non-traditional things.
yeah, it was a cool
This
concept.
this to me seems like if you had planned it better, probably could have the trajectory could have been a little bit better.
Yeah, Manfred's too busy fighting with the Phillies players and Bryce Harper to film that. So.
Get out of here! Get out of here! Get the bleep 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 bleep
Yeah.
out of the right. Like
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for that conversation.
oh man, just to hear Eric, I would love to just hear the audio.
Yeah,
I don't
that'd be
need
fine.
that would be fine. But it was like I love that. That's one of the reasons why you love Harper. Him getting kicked out of the game the other night for like the called third strike by the third base umpire was like a little bobo. That to me kind of screams of like, come on, like you are not the central focus of this game.
Yeah.
But there you go, the umps being umps.
Yep, it happens.
All right, listen, Eric. On the way out, we'll check in with people in the next couple weeks, see where this team is mid-August, and we'll be talking all things Phil. So on the way out, go Phils.
All right, go Phils.
Hey, listen to this guy. Tell me how you're feeling here. You're screaming.
I am stoked, baby!
You're screaming like it's still the game going on.
We're talking about the fightings here. The fightings! Said,
Said, Mike.
yes!